really bad. And I will admit, when I on Wednesdays drive back from Salt Lake, I am the one that exits and gets back on and exits and gets back on because I'm just like, I don't have the patience to sit in this traffic. Yeah, that's the other thing is you're usually like, no time to do this. Why is this like so? And everybody turn your mics off. All right. That's what they're gonna see. Can they hear us? I'm gonna change it. All right. Just go straight to the presentation. Here, let's go to the agenda. We'll just leave it at the agenda for a second. All right, for those that are tuning in on YouTube, we're having some technical difficulties connecting. So what you see on the screen may not be live video of the commissioners, but we will just follow with the agenda. And I'll just make notice that we're excusing Commissioner McFadden. He is not present. But Commissioner Losi is here, Commissioner Chris Roberts, Commissioner Gary Boatwright, and Commissioner Chad Scola are all in attendance. I don't know if I need to, at least as far as the commission goes. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a Pledge of Allegiance, and Gary Boatwright is going to help us with that.
So please stand. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And just moving right along with our meeting, we're going to start with public comment. And just please respect the following guidelines. Speak for 3 minutes or less. Do not remark from the audience. And please state name and city and direct comments to the entire commission, knowing that we will not respond. So public comment period is open. We have no public comment for this meeting, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. And we're going to move right on into action items, consent agenda for April 11th of 2024 minutes. Do I have any comments from the commission on that agenda?
No.
Okay.
I don't think so.
That was a meeting that I was not present at, and I believe Commissioner Boatwright was also not present at.
Yeah,
so I'm going to look for one of the two participating commissioners to make a motion on that agenda.
I'm going to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
And so moved. Okay. Do we need a vote? Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Abstain. Is that good? Since we weren't here?
You can vote for it if you were here. I've done that
You
twice.
can vote if you weren't here.
If you've read the minutes and you approve of the minutes.
But yeah, they won't pass with them too.
With only two?
Yeah.
I've read the minutes, but I did not watch the video, so I don't have any other recollection than just reading the minutes that were provided in the packet.
Well, that's the official
So-
record.
Yeah,
There you go. Then I'll approve it.
that's what you're approving is the minutes.
Is the minutes? Okay. If you guys didn't, who were in present, have any issues with it, then let's see who, since I didn't. Okay, then we're good. Okay, and then we're gonna move right into the public hearing on the flex code zoning ordinance, which I don't know, Lance, if you want to kind of talk a little bit about it first, and then we'll open it up for public comment, and then we'll just proceed.
Yeah, I think it's best to kind of cover what we're gonna talk about in the public. Have a little more background on this particular item. So well, staff was directed and we've had several meetings to discuss and develop this draft code that's in front of you. It's for a flexible zone. So there's a little bit of history of a couple different proposals that have come into South Weaver for what's called flexible buildings. And it's a typical, it's one of the PowerPoint. And it's kind of that mix of a little more industrial and literally flexible is the right name for these buildings because they're not going to be residential, but they are going to have maybe a small business, a retail, and the architecture allows it to be such that And there's a good example. They're all over. Probably the most prominent one for South Weaver is just across 84 in Uinta. And so those are fairly large, kind of industrial, but allows for a mix of uses and spaces. And the idea would be that these buildings could be modified and either completed or not completed. You can keep your construction office there or whatever you want to do with it. And so we've tried to draft a zoning ordinance that would be a new zoning ordinance to the city. The significance of that is simply that by having a zone district, we don't have any property zone this, but the way I always like to think about it is it's a tool in the toolbox for developing South Weaver. So are there places where we want these parameters and this use that would be appropriate locations, given what we've got in the code? And that'll be a subsequent discussion, because somebody'd have to come to us and say, yes, I'd like to rezone to this and follow these rules. And then that would have to, any rezone or any changes, of course, would have to go to the public hearing. Planning Commission recommends to the City Council approves or denies it. So there is that legislative process that still happens. Adopting the ordinance is a legislative process as well. So tonight you'll make a recommendation, hopefully, on your feelings and the direction and any changes you have on this. Just to walk through the ordinance itself a little bit. I'll just walk through the code elements. Obviously the first thing is that there's a general description. And even today I was rereading it, I haven't read it for a week or so. And there are some minor edits. I think there's some wording that could be fixed there on those first two paragraphs. Not sure, deleted stuff and it didn't get clear. But it would be on higher traffic streets, not local roads, but also not arterial roads. So this isn't something that would necessarily be on South Weaver Drive or Highway 89. The intent would be it's more of a removed type use. One provision that we've kept in, basically I modeled this after our commercial highway zone. And so the second section is that anything over an acre would require a conditional use permit. So any property would have to go through the parameter, meet the parameters of the flex code, but also require a conditional use permit to look at other elements that may be impacted because of the size of the site. 1 acre is a significant size site in South Weaver, so we'll give it that extra scrutiny. Then the new section is that there's an architectural and site plan review criteria that we would examine any proposed project. And it's a very simple list of elements that would be addressed: materials, the facades, the windows, and the basic design that would be at pedestrian scale. We would want the primary materials to be of a little higher quality. We're not looking for a gray cinder block. We need something that's a little stepped up. And I think I haven't heard any concerns or anything on that. Same with secondary materials, it would be accent features. The facades would have to have articulation of at least 2 feet every 60 feet on a horizontal plane. And then also on the building elevation would have to have some articulation breakup. So that we're not going to get just plain boxes out there. They'll have some, but it's not a terribly high bar, but it would add something to it. The third item is windows. And the proposal is currently 40% windows on the front facade, and then at least 15% on. You could drop to 15% if there was a large setback. We did receive a couple comments from the developer. I had the chance who's been communicating with me. He raised the concern that 40% windows is actually very high. It's higher than what they're used to. Where they've had developments really turn out well. And so this is an example of a building that they've constructed that has 20 to 25% window coverage. And you can see that there's some areas there. The main level has the windows around the doors. And then the upper story has some, those are decent sized windows. They felt that was, their recommendation was to keep it around that level, that 40% is actually quite a bit. And my counter to them was, well, it doesn't seem like very much. And they said, well, their experience has been that when you're doing that much window, that's a lot of window for, especially a flex space where, you know, we're not looking at giant walls of window. It needs to have a little more functionality than just glass. And so that was their recommendation. And then I mentioned previously that the pedestrian scale design, so it needs to be, you know, as if a person's walking by, we don't have a monstrosity of a building looming over it. The permitted uses we'll discuss in a second. We've got the land use matrix to go through for permitted and conditional uses. There is no minimum lot requirements in section 6. The proposed setbacks would be 10 front, 10 side, and 10 rear. There would be a buffer area that is required to residential, so the setback would increase there. I took an inventory of some of the parking and looking at the uses and thought that we should at least establish a base of 3.5 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet. It's kind of a hybrid between a retail that would require more, an office that might require more, but an industrial. And so hopefully the uses in the buildings average out and it's not a huge issue. We'd have to look at that as we go through the process. But all these elements would still also have to follow the sign code, the parking code, all those elements would still be there. And then there's landscaping requirement of 15% with buffer yards to residential. And that's that. The land use matrix, the code committee's gone through a couple times and made recommendations. The last column there is FL for flex zone. And the uses fall pretty close to commercial, but there are some that were taken out that were maybe a little too intense for what we want to see in a flex zone, at least recommendation wise. Again, I think the only issue here was with the feedback was that Jay Fisher would like to see restaurants as permitted. And we just thought that was a little too high of traffic, but it's certainly something you guys can discuss and make a recommendation anyway, one way or the other. I could see it working. I'd be a little concerned about the amount of traffic and intensity of the use of a restaurant as opposed to, you know, contractor's office or something like that. I think that's kind of a good summary from me. Any
Okay.
questions on that?
Say we have the public hearing first.
Yeah, do public hearing and then we'll
Yeah.
discuss. All right, then I'm going to ask for a motion to, or no, I guess I'm just gonna open the public hearing.
No, we need a motion.
Do I need a motion? Okay, sorry. Channeling Jeremy right now, I'm forgetting everything.
So,
I'm gonna ask for a motion to open the public hearing, please.
so I move we open the public hearing on the flex code zoning ordinance.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Then public hearing is open and the mic is yours, public.
No, Paul, no?
AKA Paul. Do you need a
You
minute?
have like a stack of papers that's an inch thick there. and you
We can
don't
let
have a
everybody else
comment?
go first, Paul.
It's just gonna be you, sir.
Paul Sturm, South Weaver City. I don't normally speak extemporaneously because I prepare my things, but I'm quite concerned about, well, the first developer here. And the fact that we've gone through a lot of other things in the city, in the development of that particular parcel of land. It's gone up, it's gone down. The Med Center was designed around having that 75-foot roundabout as far as their entrances and exits were concerned. There's a lot of planning that's already gone into that, that's already been approved, that in this particular piece of land doesn't seem to work. As far as relief, that's about one of the most flat pieces of land that you're going to find in the city. So anyway, I wasn't planning on doing this, but now that I see where the developer is trying to push, I had to make a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Can I, is it
Let me
appropriate to
close.
ask a question?
No? No, not during public hearing, because he can say whatever he wants.
Okay,
You can talk about it in a minute.
okay,
You've accepted that comment. We'll talk about it in a second.
okay. I move we close the public hearing.
I second that.
Seconded, and public hearing is now closed. And we're gonna open it up to, I guess it's basically Flex Code Zoning Ordinance 2024-07 and just council or commission discussion. Questions you have, comments you have. I first, Gary, if you don't mind me saying this.
No, go ahead.
There is not a specific developer who has come in to the city, as far as we know, and is not coming in front of the commission requesting a rezone to this new flex zone code. This is new code that is being created in an attempt to kind of be ahead of the curve in terms of having code that's set, that has designated uses that we as city commissioners feel is appropriate given general plan, future designation of lands, and all of that. So keep that in mind. This is not for any specific development, and anything that's been presented is just examples of other areas for consideration. This is not an official plan that's in front of the commission now for consideration. So,
And no specific area, right?
and no specific areas,
Okay.
although given the, you can kind of figure out where they would go. If it was anything over an acre,
Yep.
you know, that's not quite a commercial use, not quite a residential use. So could it be a flexible space?
Mhm.
I'll leave it at that.
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Boatright.
You can go first.
So I read through this a couple of times, zoning. I like it. My only concern is the adjacent properties. And that comes from my experience in another city is, I know these can be intended to be buffer properties, kind of a transition from commercial, then flex, and then residential. But these seem more like business parks. And so that transition from commercial to the residential areas is, it's a hard break. It's not a smooth transition. And so that's really my biggest concern is I haven't seen areas where these are adjacent to residential areas where they seem to work or be that transition area. I would like to see something that increases the buffer, not necessarily space, but trees. I mean, just, am I making sense? Sorry, I've had a long day at work, so.
Are you saying buffer zone like around the property or at the front of the property?
No, it's so like if it's adjacent to a residential area, that there's more there than just a solid, like a concrete wall. That's-
Kind of blends in with the residential.
Yeah.
Lance, did you
And I
say
don't
that
know
was
what
10
that
feet?
is.
10 feet on front, side and rear,
Well, that's the building
the
setback.
building
But
setback.
adjacent to residential, we have to go to chapter 15.
Which is?
Our existing code regarding, let me pull it up here. Our existing residential buffers. That's outlined there.
And I apologize, I did not look at those. So,
Yes.
but that's my concern is just having these adjacent to residential areas. I haven't seen an area where, and not that it doesn't work, but it's a hard break. And I wouldn't want to be the person that has this behind my property or next to my property. So,
I'll admit I share the same concern about the buffer backing to residential. And especially, because I think you said that the windows was 15% in this code, that we've got it set to 15% for the rear, or was it, did I mishear that
was
number?
If it met, then it's setback.
If it met the setback, it's a
It would be
15%
dropped to
window
15. If it met
requirement,
100-foot
a
setback.
100 foot, okay.
Otherwise, it's 40%
At the front,
on the front facade.
what's on the rear? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yes.
Oh, windows are here.
5%.
15.
All facades must shall have a minimum.
5% on all of them.
5%.
The front is 40 currently.
Yeah.
Drops to 15 if you have a 100-foot front setback. Or to a street. And
Yeah, I
then
don't,
would be 5% on all
and I
is
had,
it-
go ahead.
So can I shift gears just a little bit?
Yeah,
Help me understand the 40%, because
Yeah,
not that
that's
I like to listen to developers or take their feedback in, but when I imagine 40% of a facade being windows, that does seem like a lot. Help me understand the reasoning for that.
Well, the reasoning is to avoid, number one, just. a blank
Avoid
wall.
that?
A blank wall and no
Yes.
interaction with the community.
Okay.
So, I mean, there is something to that, blood planning studies and whatnot. Having eyes on the street is what it's called. That's much more of a residential thing, but it would also apply here. The other one element would be design. So anyway, that creates a community
Okay.
interaction. The design itself breaks up those walls. It adds light to the interior of the building, that type of thing. So it's usually a nice way to get a better design.
And I'm not opposed to it.
No.
I'm just asking, is the reason the developer that you talked to against it, is it more money?
Well, it might be a little more money, I'm not sure how big a factor that is. I think what they presented to me was that just their projects in general, that have that when they get them designed to meet 40%, that would come across as a lot of windows. For something that's a flex space, I mean, it's
Right.
almost,
Like ski and see, I feel like there's a lot of windows. That'd be like that style, like the one down here.
and that's one story, that's, retail,
Yeah.
pedestrians, they're counting on that.
I think the 40% windows actually would help in my other concern about residential, that it doesn't look like an industrial park. So I'm okay with the 40%. So, okay, that's all. No, I'm good.
I had I don't know if, because I missed last code committee too, so I don't know if that came up, because I hadn't thought about windows until I read that. So I was wondering the same thing and trying to get an idea of what 40% looked like. And then after, can we show that? This is 20?
2020.
Oh, right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is 2025, you can see, I
I'm
think
just
this
trying to-
illustrates that it does break up the building and.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture, so if this building had 40%, like you had 20% more windows to that,
Double it almost.
it does seem like, I don't know, it seems like a lot to me. I mean, it's fine, I'm fine, but giving like an option of, you know, because even that other example, the one that you had sent in,
This one? Or-
yeah. I'm just like trying to add 20, it just seems like the whole front would just be, like you'd have to do like the whole second story like glass then, right?
Well, and I think one thing just for consideration is obviously we're talking about the front of the building and the aesthetic and what it looks like on the flip side, which is probably what is going to be backing up to residences, to homes. Is this something we want them looking at? Or is it gonna be because if it's only 5% and it goes up to 15 if they do 100% setback or 100-foot setback, am I saying that right?
So it drops to 5, it's 5% on the other side.
Okay,
It's only the front that would be 40. If the building is set back 100 feet, it would drop to 15%.
And what's the, and why does that change?
Just because you remove so far from the street that you don't. you no
You're
longer
further
have that
back.
presence.
Okay,
otherwise your setback is 10 feet.
The front setback is not,
So I thought you said 10, 10 and 10.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so it is 10, 10, and 10.
And then the other picture, so if you go back to the other one, like those have garage doors, so
Mhm.
those don't count. So then you'd have to really fill it up with windows,
I-
right? Or,
Yeah, that's, cause
I
that,
was counting those, even though they're opaque, they're.
okay, I didn't know,
I was
yeah.
There's
counting
window
them.
space.
Okay.
But if it's
which is
not
the same
windows-
as the other one, cause that other one had doors too, no?
Oh.
Or were those,
This one.
Yeah.
is that a door?
I don't
Yeah, they
know.
have doors.
Okay.
So that counts. Either way, so counting that, that's still,
Yeah, that's a lot.
it seems like a ton of glass. I don't know. And I guess, are we saying that this could potentially be the one side facing
The street.
this, just always facing the street? So it never would be
My
facing
guess.
residential?
Most likely, this would be the front, not the rear of the building.
Right. But could the front of the building be facing inward?
That, yeah, because one of the proposals that came to city council when it was just a discussion, I believe they had the frontage facing a street. And what you would have seen, and this was over, just to give reference, where General RV is.
Yeah.
It's the lot of land that's in between 475 and to the west.
Yeah.
The Freedom Landing Townhomes. That property right there, they kind of came in with just a, what do you think concept? But it did have two buildings facing each other. So looking at it from 475, looking at it from the
Is the
residences,
back on
you're
both?
looking at the back of the, or what would be the back of the buildings.
It's like Cane's and Cafe Rio and Shake Shack over in Irving.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You see the back of it.
Yep. And I think that's one thing that maybe, I don't know, Lance, if you want to put up the land use matrix to see what it is in the flex zone that we're thinking is a good fit for this kind of a thing, because unless you guys looked at the land use matrix. No?
I don't know. I guess, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I have. I don't know if I mean,
Before we go
I
on
don't
that,
know if
just
I
to
have those
clarify
concerns.
those.
Yes,
It's the front facade, it is each facade that fronts a street
hmm
may have,
Oh, so if they reversed it, then it would just have to be the back that had,
it's each facade, so yeah, if it's facing a street, that's gotta have the 40%.
I like that.
okay.
They might have the internal circulation or outlet, but, so it is the street side that would have the higher windows. Articulation.
I don't, I think, I guess I don't have a huge preference other than it seems like a huge percentage.
Especially if it
Based on the
isn't,
couple that we
if
just
the
looked at.
side of the building, like she was saying, is on the road side, to fill that whole little side, 40% of windows would be.
Oh, if you put it, yeah.
Side, even like
sideways.
they wanted, like she was saying they were recommending.
and where did the 40% come from?
It's just, I looked at several different communities and what they've done in their codes and
When they had it set at 40?
What are the, do we know what the UNO ones are?
I don't.
Because that might be something.
Because that just doesn't look any different than like some of those other
I mean,
examples,
20
which
to
makes me
25 is
think
not
it's that, and I feel like those have,
But
I mean,
don't-
even,
I like.
because I
Keep it at
use
40.
the gym over there, and I feel like that's a ton of light that's in there, but,
Oh, like across between.
yeah,
Yeah,
so,
that's true. That's a
um,
perfect, yeah.
yeah, and if that's way less, I don't know, that just, it seems like a lot of windows.
I like
and-
windows.
I don't mind windows either.
My house is big windows.
I'm just pointing
And
at
the
the
height.
Google Street Views, sorry. I have no problem.
32 feet high.
They're very similar.
I mean, I like windows, I guess it's just like having the option and flexibility a little bit more, but,
Now they can scoot it back.
I just looking at the street view of those, the buildings in Uinta, they're very similar to the red brick that we saw. They have the second story window and then the lower.
They have the smaller windows up on top and
Yeah.
windows on the bottom level. Well, I'm thinking too, if these are backing into residences with all of the windows, depending if it is 40%, if any of this does happen to, can't think of anything where it would back up and have windows looking into, because I think they'd be more looking.
I just think too, like,
Yeah.
I mean, my building that I'm at, I mean, it doesn't even have, I don't know what the percentage of windows would be in the front of that, but like at 4 PM, I mean,
the sunlight.
what you have to do to try to keep it manageable in there with the heat that comes through the glass too, like, I don't
Depends
know.
on which way it's facing.
Yeah,
There's 10 things you can
true.
do. I mean, that's not our problem to solve
But
right now.
I'm just saying, it's my opinion.
Okay.
So, and then I had another on the, if you say restaurant, that just means restaurant in, like, you can't specify what somebody could use for hours or anything else, right? It would just have to be open to be open.
Yeah, unless it's over an acre, and then we could specify hours of operation for a conditional use permit.
Cause I just think like some places, like, I mean, yeah, you'd have, I mean, it'd be no different than, I mean, us considering, you know, the use of, the Logan gym owner that wanted to
Oh,
look at having us,
a gym space.
yeah, over here. I mean, yeah, you're gonna have periods of the day that are super busy, but I guess I didn't see it as any different than that, other than, you know, if it's somewhere that's gonna be open like in the evening and have a lot of traffic in the evening or something. But if it was like, if you could, you know, some of these breakfast diners or lunch, it's like, you know, midday, people come in and eat and then leave. I just, if you can't control that, then you can't, then I don't know.
But the thing is, I think you've allotted, if I remember, 3.5 parking spots
Yeah.
per thing. And I know at another flex space like this that I've seen in Riverdale, the owners have like signs on the front of their building saying parking only.
Oh, yeah.
This
So
one.
I think a restaurant, I agree with you. I don't think these aren't designed
I don't
for
think
a
it's the right
restaurant
zone.
space.
Well, and think about that space. So if you're familiar with Northridge on the west side, where they put in the new Burley Burger, there's a Zeppi's,
Oh,
there's a
yeah,
little
I've seen
breakfast
that.
scramble, there's a Firehouse Subs. Those are all little restaurants. And it's kind of right in between a main road, and then you've got the apartments, that Seasons that's right back behind them. And it's, if you've ever driven in there and tried to access any of those, and deliveries for, you know, the restaurants, for their supplies, for their, no, like if
Oh,
we're
well,
talking for something,
our parking lot up here is
yes.
insane in the evening sometimes
Yep.
anyway, so.
So I don't think a restaurant fits, especially with the parking that we already have in place. No.
Yeah, I
Does
didn't
that
think
mean
about that part,
bakery would be something a little bit different.
which is not a
because
restaurant.
It's not a restaurant. It doesn't have.
Yeah,
the
maybe that's what I was
parking.
thinking, like if you could
So-
specify, I guess, like what you can differentiate between what food establishments are.
And I think that's kind of what the land use matrix puts in, because restaurants, I believe, was not.
The restaurants is just restaurants.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and the thought I keep having as you guys discussing is, it's just we could put a square footage limitation on it, so you can't have a coffee shop or a sandwich shop, sure, but you're not bringing in Chili's or something.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that. I was, something more, because, you know, it's likely a little bit cheaper space, so it seems like you see more of those kind of things going into flex spaces now anyway.
Mhm.
And yeah, something like that, like, you know, coffee shops or a bakery, yeah, they'll have their rush in the mornings, maybe at lunch, and then that's it. I mean, most of them aren't even open.
People in the flex space.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Close by.
or just hopping off the freeway real quick and grab something. Anyway, okay, that was my only question on that, but that answer, I think we answered my
No
question
such
on that.
thing as hopping off the freeway real quick at 5 o'clock.
There's no more
6
hopping
o'clock.
off anywhere.
Well, if we could go to Uinta and talk about their street light over there.
There, oh, yeah.
Can we do
I don't
that?
think that's, I think that's
Can we put
UDOT.
that on our agenda?
I think that's UDOT. I don't think that's even Uinta's problem. That's UDOT.
We'll do it for UDOT too then.
Yeah, I think of like Burley Burger here even for parking and stuff is not.
Yeah, that parking lot gets.
Yep.
I don't even know what to
Has
do
it-
sometimes.
Which is a good sign. I mean, it's
They're
a
busy. We want 'em
successful
busy.
business,
We
but
want successful businesses. Was there anything on the land use matrix that stood out to anybody? I'll admit, I've looked through it so many times and I've already kind of given my comments through the code committee in terms of what I thought was appropriate, because permitted uses means if they come in and they apply for a flex zone and it's permitted, they can do it. If it's conditional, it means we can put conditions on it, but of course it's related to safety for the public, interfaces, things like that. So is there anything that stands out as a use that you?
so drive-through, I think,
Oh,
was
yeah.
that listed as a,
Conditional use permit.
So we're saying
What, yeah,
What's a
since we're
drive-through?
not talking about restaurants, what are we thinking
a
of the
pharmacy?
drive-through?
Like what?
Pharmacy,
what else is there?
dry cleaner,
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Mhm.
okay. Other than, I didn't have any concerns at
Vote for
all,
that.
pretty reasonable.
Commissioner Scola, Commissioner Roberts, anything?
No.
You're still
that-
looking, you need a minute?
No,
I,
yeah.
after
Not
we
gonna
talked
rush
about
it.
the restaurants, I thought about that. So I was just, yeah, I guess I don't know what that means that we can limit if a drive-through could be all sorts of things. Technically,
And that's again, it's a conditional. So it's something they can come in with a proposal and say, hey, we want to add a drive-through window, and then we can look at it and say, well, does the use fit? Does it make sense? Are there safety impacts, things like that? It means it's open as an option. We're
But at
not
which point
completely
we'd have
shutting down
to-
Drive-throughs.
and then we have to give them an option to meet conditions though, no? So then theoretically, if they,
To clarify, to add to it, it's a conditional use is permitted use.
yeah,
Mhm.
so
It's a
if they
permitted
meet
use.
if they meet the
It
or the
says
conditions,
requirements, But it's allowed.
so it
use.
could happen, whatever could still happen in that. I mean, yeah, okay.
What's considered agricultural, what businesses? That's permitted.
Yeah, that probably needs to be taken off.
Oh, yeah.
I don't need, is it
Let me look up the definition.
farm animals?
No,
in
I'm
it?
actually glad you said that,
Yes.
because I saw it and I was like, I don't think that's right.
Yeah.
You caught something we missed.
Seed shop, plant store.
Plant store, heirloom seedlings.
So the definition of agriculture, which is permitted, right? Am I reading
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Correct.
A farm industry area used for commercial production, keeping or maintenance, or for the sale of plants. That's why we kept it in there.
The sale of plants.
Yep, that's why we kept it in there.
Oh,
Or
So
lands
it's-
devoted to soil conservation management program.
Like
Yeah.
a flower
Like a
shop.
flower
Includes
shop or
tilling of
something.
soil, raising
Well, and if
crops,
they want
horticulture,
seedlings and hey, I've
gardening.
got vegetables and things like that, not
Oh,
necessarily
yeah.
farmers markets, because
Sure.
farmers markets was something separate.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
okay.
anything else stand out?
No.
And I think the biggest thing is just, is this a zone that we feel like we need? As like you said, a tool in our little toolbox for future development.
So exactly what is the goal, just to bring in smaller businesses then, or like what's the goal to bring in a flex space into South Weaver? Just,
Yeah, so it allows for, I guess, it would be that zone. Right now, we don't have this tool.
right,
So we've got to either use a commercial zone if we want something like this, which is gonna allow for a lot more uses. The architectural design, maybe not as much. There would be difficulties, it might be too heavy a hammer, so to speak.
Mhm.
And then really that's it.
Sure.
We need a tool that's, just the right size to allow for this use. I mean, it allows for, when you're looking at the overall holistic community aspect and developing it, it allows for a small business, an affordable place to be. They don't have to be on the super expensive commercial ground. They're in between.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're a little closer to residential, but they're either a smaller operation, less traffic, noise should be down, that type of thing. It wouldn't be so as intensive use and space. And I think we would get, the designs of these are a lot better than just a huge industrial building too.
Right.
So, and I think there's a lot of businesses that fall in this category, and that's why we're seeing the demand.
Okay.
I mean, they can't build enough of it, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's all you almost see going up anywhere.
Sure.
Besides apartments.
Well, that's true. That is very true.
Okay, any other discussion, comments? Lance, anything else you want to add on? Because I think,
I think the windows of discussion, I just don't know good or bad what's what,
I'm fine keeping it at 40 because I kind of feel like it sets the bar high. And then bring us something that looks amazing, and if it's like, hey, we really need the windows to be notched down to 35% or 30%, show us why we should give that. Because is it something that could be swayed, or does it a hard 40%?
It's a hard for
It's a hard 40%. Okay, well then,
You're putting.
Yeah, that's my
the
only
bar.
thing. is-
that's your bar.
There's no discussion.
Meet it.
about that.
Well, and at that point, if they want to bring us something and it doesn't meet the 40%, then there you go.
They can ask for an exception too, can't they?
That's what I just said he
They
could.
could, but the exception criteria would be, there's a hardship, there's, I can't see where windows are ever gonna be other than I don't want the cost and I don't want to, I'd like to have a better structure of a building.
I mean, you mentioned
Meeting the
impacts.
exception variance criteria would be a little bit different, would be hard to meet if you left it in there.
Well, the exception is they move it back.
Yeah, impacts to interior functionality. In my mind's eye, if you've got the front of your building, you still have 3 walls and interior space that you can do a lot with. That one wall shouldn't designate whether your business fails
Right.
or
I
not.
imagine like, or like if the garage
Or
door, if they
something.
don't want to, glass garage, then that's a lot of space to fill with windows, right? But I don't know, yeah.
Not my problem, so.
And we still have same with flex zone. You still have building height. They can't go above the building height requirements that we have in, building zoning. That all still stands.
Building.
Oh, yes. For a second, I was going 35 feet for windows. Percent.
Minimum.
It's a lot of weight.
It is a lot of window.
Well, I'm good. I feel like I'd be voted against if I recommended a change on the windows, but
Do what you
I
want.
would.
Do what you want, then do it.
So if I wanted, what do I do if I want to do that? I just read it and
Make
put
a
on the record.
motion with the
Mhm.
following amendment.
So I would like to make a motion then
With the following amendments.
with the following amendments. So I move to recommend the approval of Flex Code Zone Ordinance 2024-07 to the City Council with the following amendments of decreasing the window requirement to 25%.
Hmm.
You would have made a higher number, but not that.
Well, I was just going off the one. I would settle for 30%. I'd do 30, but
Do I hear 35? I got a gavel.
yeah, I would do 30. I just think that, I don't know, it just seems like you're not leaving a lot of room. I just still want to see a big building with 40 and it would have probably maybe made more sense, but
Can you restate your
Yes.
motion?
want me to read the whole thing again?
Sure.
Just say I'm amending my,
So amending my amendment to 30%
I second that.
on the front facade. Do I need to mention that? Or the street
Well,
facing,
yeah,
the street
on
facing
the-
facade? Yeah,
Instead
yeah,
of
yeah.
more down the front side.
Yes,
On
that
the
one.
street facing side. And could you also just throw in there, because I do have some minor editorial changes.
I was gonna say that the minor
Oh.
edits to the first 2 paragraphs.
Oh,
just
yeah.
For readability's sake.
Including the minor 2 edits to the first 2 paragraphs.
I second that.
All right, we're gonna do a roll call vote, starting with Commissioner Roberts,
Yes, I approve.
Commissioner Boatright,
Aye.
Commissioner Scola,
Yes.
and Commissioner Losi is a yes with the suggestions and the edits. All in favor?
That was in the motion. so
That was in the
that's what you
motion?
voted for, yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, we're all good. We got a new flex zone,
Well.
Not yet.
almost. Actually, we're recommending for approval to city council, so we'll see what city council says about it.
Yeah, we have no power.
Yeah, we're just recommending.
You can sell
We can pretend
Um,
for a minute that we have some power.
we've spent some time on this one. I'm just saying, it's not been a drop in the bucket. It's a lot of drops in the bucket. Okay, so moving on to reports, new business. I don't know if there's any new business that I'm aware of. Anybody got any new business?
No, I have something for the next
Okay.
section though.
Then we'll just move right along to agenda item number 6, commissioners, starting with Commissioner Scola.
I just have a question. I don't know if this would be for this or if I need to be the one that goes to the city council to present my concern. So the storage units were purchased by somebody, obviously, right?
it.
Yeah. And it doesn't, I mean, it bothers me a little bit, but I feel like we have like this dark sky initiative and the new lights that they put in are insane. I mean, I don't live on that first road. I just didn't know if that was something like where to bring that up, I guess, like, because I'm up at 4:30 every morning, so I just see it every morning and I just look at all those houses and they're just all lit up. And I mean, maybe they don't care, but I just feel like it kind of, I mean, we just went on and on with General RV so much about their
Lighting.
lighting requirements, and then also with the medical center, and I get that it's existing, but it seems like something changed, or I don't know. That was I meant to bring it up.
So I can, and just on that, so a zoning violation or code complaint was submitted. We do not have lighting standards. We do not have dark skies or anything like that. So there's no limitations on our building types.
Yeah, we do.
I thought we,
I could find in the code.
Was that just part of the
Bright Lock we've
CUP?
been pursuing as a nuisance. They've been very good to work with. It's been a little slow, going back and forth, but I've been corresponding with them the last
Okay.
couple weeks. They actually turned it down on Sunday, and you can sort of tell that it's a little bit lighter or darker,
okay.
but it was not near enough, and they're ordering
Oh, okay.
new shielding. That's gonna take a couple weeks. I actually asked them in an email today to reduce it. You turn some off
Okay.
while you're working it out.
And I get it.
So we are working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the neighbors are very concerned. It's ridiculous.
Okay. And I get it. Like, I mean, I'm sure storage units probably get broken into, and I
And that's
understand the
their- and that's their
concern,
comeback is that.
but at the same
security
time, I just. it's
Are
like-
these the storage units right off of South Weaver Drive?
Yeah,
In 2100?
yeah, because I drive down
Okay.
that road. I'm on 2100. So when I turn, it just like catches by. I'm like, I don't think that was ever
So
that
bright.
bright before. Like, so anyway, I just wanted to bring it up, but it sounds like it's been brought up and addressed. So
Well, we're working on it.
we're working on it.
Not
So
done
that,
yet,
hey, that's
In
good.
progress.
That's good news.
but they want to be good neighbors and they're doing. it.
Awesome.
So-
Perfect. That's my only thing.
Nice. All right, moving on, Commissioner Roberts.
I do not have anything today.
Commissioner Boatright?
Nothing.
Okay, I actually had a couple of items and I'm glad you brought up yours because there's a couple things I've noticed. I'm wondering if notices for weed control and mitigation have been sent out to property owners where there maybe are vacant lots because the weed growth is becoming very high and it's
Oh, yeah.
actually becoming a visual safety hazard, especially at the exit or the entrance onto northbound 89 for cars exiting onto South Weaver Drive. You cannot see oncoming traffic that's heading eastbound. Is this making sense what I'm saying?
I'm trying.
Just to be clear, we'll look
Yep.
at the map after.
We'll look at a map after, but I'm just,
But that would
and
be UDOT property, wouldn't it? Am I thinking right off 89?
it's the loop. I don't know if it's UDOT,
Well,
but
somebody needs to get to it.
along the
UDOT.
frontage road,
Okay.
we've got the sidewalks. Both sides are becoming very overgrown, hard to traverse and walk on. And there's other lots across the city that I get it. You don't own it or you're not building on it. There's not a structure, but it's your responsibility to keep the weeds cut down and mowed. And especially with all the rain and moisture we've been having, they've been growing. So wanted to bring that up.
So I have a couple of those complaints that have been submitted.
Okay.
And I'm working on specific sites.
Perfect.
People just need to let me know. I can send.
Let
it
you
out.
know.
I have not gone out. Nor will I, don't know when that'll happen. So if you got ones, let me know.
I will let you know. We'll talk after the meeting, especially the one for just the exit. Heading northbound, exiting onto South Weaver Drive. Again, your visual sight line to the west is completely impaired. And that's already a hard enough zone because you don't know if people are turning or going straight. And I've seen near misses on a daily occasion. So we need to get those weeds trimmed down. The other is relating the intersection of 2700 East and Deer Run Drive. I would like to have the city council have the discussion, and I don't know if it's them or public safety that needs to do this, but where we have painted on both the east and the west side, the red no parking areas, that on the east side needs to be extended southbound past the intersection. Because what's happening is we're having large trucks parking right across from Deer Run, that intersection. And it is causing cars as they're traveling northbound on 2700 to merge into oncoming traffic. And then you add in people turning and I've almost been hit. My daughter's almost been hit. My husband's almost been hit. It's out of control. So we need to talk about extending that at least past the intersection, heading southbound on the east side. Yep.
Yeah, I actually agree with that one.
Yep.
For sure.
On 27.
You just
On
kind of have to
2700
start
East.
going and I just flinch and just grin.
Well, I had a car, well, Deer Run, you already have to come out so far just to see
Sure.
oncoming traffic. And I had a car, I had no turn signal on. I was as far to the left as I could. And he still turned in front of me and almost hit the truck. There was
Mhm.
actually two trucks parked at the time. One had a trailer on the back of it. And I was just like, no, this can't happen anymore. So I am bringing that to the commission or the councils, city, public safety, whoever it is that needs to address that. I think it needs to be looked at.
Okay.
So. And
I
then,
agree with that.
anything else? That was all I had. So. All
I
right,
move we adjourn.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
It's not 7:30 yet.
I know.
No, I